Hey, how's it going, YouTube? Domino Paris 21 here with special guest.
ZachZag of Vanguard people.
They couldn't even see your fingers. Yeah, but I have ZachZag here as part of a special guest for this episode of Why I Play This Deck with, of course, as you see, with the little football formation, Spike Brothers. Now, ZachZag is actually one of the, a very long time Spike Brother player, along with myself. So definitely he has a lot of experiences and input about this deck, and I think both our decks are practically the same.
Almost.
Yeah, but when it comes to Spike Brothers, I think Spike Brothers are probably one of the more underrated and at the same time underplayed decks, especially in the tournament scene. While it is a very technical deck that require a good amount of skill to really unlock its full potential, it could definitely catch a lot of opponents off guard who aren't fully aware of Spike Brothers, and could definitely close out a lot of games pretty easily. Especially with Zach here, who actually recently went to nationals in the team nationals with his Spike Brother deck. But yeah, Spike Brothers overall, really fun deck, really offensive based. But what's really nice with Spike Brothers, of course, is that a misconception that they have is that they're just a pure rush deck. Well, at the same time, by effectively using your main quarterback here, Dudley Emperor, you can actually effectively toolbox your field based on certain situations. So really a lot of options to go with. So me and ZachZag here are actually going to explain a few things for you guys. So starting off with Spike Brothers, really, what makes Spike Brothers unique? Or what differentiates them from other clans? Now, one, their starter, Mecha Trainer.
Yeah, clone. The Mecha Trainer is nice because you get there's a lot of good grade ones that Spike Brothers has access to. So that could be an 8K vanilla Reckless Express, or even a Medical Manager, depending on what your opening hand looks like for grade 3 wise. There's often times where if my hand turns into a Juggernaut Maximum deck, I'll not be afraid to search for a card like this because I know that I'll need this soul to be aggressive later on. Or if my opening hand has a vanilla, I'll search for a Reckless Express because a column with Reckless Express and any other like cheap booster like a Draw Trigger or a Perfect Shield that I want to play aggressive with makes for a very aggressive column that your opponent doesn't want to retaliate against, because what's the sense of throwing a 15k attack at a Draw Trigger? Your Draw Trigger effectively became a 10k shield for your Vanguard.
So yeah, so it really, these are like the main three options you go for. A lot of times you go for Wonder Boy or Reckless Express. So Mecha Trainer, I mean, just amazing. Like I say in all my Kagro videos, Conroe is the best starter in the game. So, well, as to him as well for this clan. So a lot of stuff to toolbox into. Every clan wishes they have this.
Yeah, and I mean the setup for this guy and the next card that's coming up with the grade 2 is Field Driller. You can just automatically set up your 15k column and this card will punish you.
So it's pretty good, but we'll talk about this in a sec. Now, of course, the three main cards that make Spike Brothers, well, Spike Brothers is, well, these are kind of like what you call the taggers in the deck, which we'll explain why.
Which is the Spike Brother mechanic.
Exactly. So yeah, so they all share the same skill. When this unit attacks, you Soul Blast 1, and the unit gain plus 5,000. It does go back into the deck at the end of battle, but that's why I say essentially you attack, Soul Blast, gain plus 5, and then you tag out. Now, of course, obviously, Spike Brother, this may seem like a downside, but of course with Spike Brothers, the whole idea is you attack with these guys, and once they tag out, you free up some open space so that you can be able to make a big push with your boss monster, which, we'll explain how that combo works exactly, but these are like your important enablers in the deck. And of course with ZachZag's luck, it's like his favorite card.
Yeah, I ride this card like 75-80% of the time, so I'm very accustomed to playing around on 11k without any skills.
Yeah, but hey, 11k is still a good body, but Maximum is a very, very important card, especially with the cross rides, because of course him, with the 7k, hits for 18, and of course he hits for 23 by himself. There's really not many cards out there that can really manipulate their own power like that without even relying on triggers, so he really is what help pushes. So of course, if you're dealing with 11Ks, you always put a 7 behind a Bracky, which is good. So these are kind of like these are your heavy hitters. These are how you throw your haymakers last minute at your opponent to really make those pushes. So important enablers, like I said. Now, of course, these are your taggers. Now, talking about a few techs in the deck. You have, of course, the Field Driller. This is something that me and ZachZag have been theorizing for a while, and I noticed that a lot of guys don't really play this card, but essentially, with Field Driller, he shares that generic skill that a lot of clans have, which is when he hits the Vanguard, of course, and you have 4 other Spike Brother Rearguards, you draw a card. So,
when this guy hits, you get to draw, and if your opponent gave you 1 to break and you broke, most most likely you're gonna win that game because the deficit. So you -1 them and +1 yourself.
Yeah, it's just really good because the whole point with field drill, at least the way me and ZachZag like playing this deck, is you essentially ride it, fill up your field, preferably use Mecha Trainer, switch a Wonder Boy so that it hits for 15, and you ideally rush your opponent with 3
with any other card
full attacks. It doesn't even matter necessarily as long as you can put 4 out there because the idea with this deck is you want to try and rush your opponent a little early if you can to try and push him to that 4 or 5 damage mark as quickly as possible so you can just start, you can start like whacking him with this guy. So essentially he rewards you for being aggressive early. And essentially, like as we both theorized and play tested, if we're able to get Field Driller off turn 2, we win. Because Spike Brothers are dangerous with extra cards. Like, it's pretty nuts. Now, of course, and then you have the Panzergale, which is a nice toolbox option for Emperor. So I say, just for the most part, staple in Spike Brothers.
For now, he's definitely a staple.
Here. So that's just the main key enablers in the deck. Now we're going to talk about the main card, the main quarterback of the deck, Dudley Emperor. This card is amazing. I think when it comes to boss Vanguards in the game, I think he's definitely in my top 5, even top 3.
He's best 10k, easy.
Yeah, he's like the best 10k Vanguard. Really good. He's still viable later on too as well. He's just meant to rush, of course, because obviously when you have your taggers, you tack, you soul blast, you tag out. It frees up the space so you can use a skill. So
yeah, because his skill is important, where you have to call them to an open rearguard slot. So I mean, if the card goes out, it's got to come back in. And Emperor's skill just makes it that much easier for you to put pressure on without having to boost your attackers that first wave.
Yeah, so he really can finish off a lot of games. Essentially, you can just push in 5 attacks in one turn, heavy hitting attacks too. But here's actually one misconception that I really love with Dudley Emperor. Obviously you automatically think that he's just a pure rush card, which is actually a huge misconception because if you think of it this way, let's say you have 2 dead grade 3s in your hand. Let's actually talk about 2 ways you can actually use him as a nice toolbox option. So of course, let's say you have 2 maximums and you have a Wonder Boy behind your Vanguard, but you don't have any good boosters, but you're at limit break. Well, I mean, you could tell him ZachZag.
So, I mean, first of all, I would probably try and throw anything, but if you only have the 2 cards, you can easily pull out boosters with this. So you're swinging for 21, that's 2 cards minimum, best case for your opponent, and you get to pull out 2 taggers.
Preferably this guy if you can.
And in this case, even if you get a trigger, getting triggers and putting them on your rear guards is sometimes even more devastating than having them on the Vanguard, because this is 23 without doing anything, and this 28 with the Soul Blast if they got a trigger. That's a lot of cards out of hand, considering they're probably not all 10Ks either.
Yeah, so if you're able to do it the right time when your opponent's at like at least 4 or 5 damage, then all you have to do is rush one more time, and then you essentially you can sometimes win with a nice finishing combo. But we're gonna explain how to actually how to figure that out. But yeah, that's one way you can actually use it to toolbox into boosters, or one of my favorite plays is, let's say you have boosters, or let's say you actually need to increase your defense. So obviously, you limit break, put these 2 in, and you call out some of the best cards to use.
2 10k shields, so you trade no shield for a 20k in shield.
So you just plus in shield. Now at the end, a lot of times you're going to be usually rushing for 5 attacks anyway, and this allows you to survive one more turn. That way you can make a second push with Emperor, because you usually have to rush twice to finish off your opponent. So it's an amazing toolbox option.
And the nicest part about this is it guarantees the cards in your hand for your next limit break, because all of a sudden you had to play 2 less cards from that drive check you just checked.
Exactly. So these help. I mean, it's 20,000 shield. It's 20,000 worth of shield you have on your field that you don't have to play from your hand. And it's very important to keep cards in your hand. It's actually dangerous to give Spike Brothers card advantage, which is kind of weird sometimes, in my experience at least. So overall, let's just actually demonstrate the whole idea of the combo. So let's see. You have a field like, I don't know, this. I think this is my perfect field.
Perfect field.
Perfect. Let's just do this. Not too perfect. So we're gonna actually demonstrate this combo for you. So obviously, you attack with Reki, Soul Blast, tag out. We're going to assume we have Soul in here, so you tag out, second here.
16 Vanguard.
Tag out. We normally don't attack, we usually don't boost the first attacks, because we want to just knock out a few cards out of our opponent's hand, and we want them to be devastated by these last 2 attacks with boost, because especially if you hit criticals, it's very devastating. So of course you go 21. Limit Break.
Best case, 2 grade 3s.
And then two Juggernaut Maximums. So these would be like your final little haymakers to throw at your
These
opponent.
are kind of the questions you gauge on what your opponent's hand size look like, because a lot of times it might be that you want to pull the Panzergales out, or they have enough cards in their hand that you are going to go for the finishing blow.
So it's really up to you. This is kind of where the skill comes in. It's up to you as a player to determine whether you want to just make a push for game or you want to maybe increase your defense. But let's say we're going to assume our opponent is at 5 damage, so these attack, Soul Blast, it's 23 each.
Without triggers.
So it's pretty insane. So we're going to, so let's go back again and we're going to count how much our opponent actually needs to guard everything. So, where's that Bracky? So we're going to assume our opponent's 5 damage, so we're going to go through that combo again. So Bracky attacking is 14. That's usually on average a 5k shield, and we're not going to look at shield value, we're going to look at how many cards it takes. So, 1 card. Where's that die?
There's a 20 side.
I don't know if you can read that. So this attacks for 16. On average, it's usually like a 10k block for most 11k Vanguard, so that's 1 card. Second.
Oh, that's the second card.
And then we bring out these two. Now on average, we're going to assume our opponent maybe has a perfect guard, but on average it usually takes about 2 cards to effectively guard a 21k attack. So that's 2 cards. And we're not accounting for any drive checks or any triggers. So these attack for 23. On average, that's 15,000 shield. That's on average 2 cards. Same thing here. 2 cards. Now, as you see here, your opponent needs 8 cards to effectively block everything. 8 cards worth of defense in total of their hand size and their interceptors. So really, this is like the question that me and ZachZag always ask our opponents. It's really that scary question. It's how many cards do you have left? Because, I mean, I don't know. You tell them. Because you do it
That's
all the
my
time.
most intimidating question. I stand. How many cards you got left? 5? Alright, cool.
Like, you pretty much know, like, that's how scary this deck is. When this deck really gets rolling, and you really put a good player behind this deck that really has a lot of experience with it, they pretty much already know when they're winning. So your opponent's really on a countdown at this point. Because even if you think about it, even if I gave you 3 perfect guards and 3 cards to discard for him and 1 interceptor, that's only 7 cards in total. You literally cannot guard this. And like I said, in terms of the card count, that's if you have a hand, which usually when you're at 5 damage, dealing with another rush of this, you usually don't. You usually maybe have like 6 cards in hand, or even 5 for the most part. But yeah, I mean, that's really what makes Spike Brothers really intimidating.
I mean, this setup's the reason why I like this deck the most, because you do the most you can to guarantee you're winning without having to rely on triggers. It pushes the hardest, the fastest, and it's so easy to be aggressive from the get-go without paying, I guess, the cost of losing your field presence, because if you're smart about it, you leave your cards on the field. But because these cards can become defensive shields themselves. There are many times where I've left a Juggernaut on the field. My opponent thought that card was enough of a threat to kill it. So this card turned into had some added shield value.
Yeah, so it's a nice damage sponge. So like I said, like really in the hands of a really, really good player that can get the most out of this deck in any situation. I mean, this is definitely one of the most dangerous decks in a tournament. It's simple as that. Catch a lot of opponents off guard, and like I said, if you get the deck rolling the way it's supposed to be, I mean, your opponent's just on a countdown. So it's just how many turns do you have left until I finish you, and all I gotta say is, like, in my experience playing in tournaments, my average rounds usually last like 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's nice and quick.
The swiftest. But yeah, overall, guys, so that concludes our episode of why I play this deck. Definitely Spike Brothers, they're a pretty budgety deck. I mean, you can easily build this deck fully complete with perfect guards for about $100 or so.
Yeah, I mean, this is the most expensive card. He's like $10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About, like, even 8. But now, of course, for all my dedicated Spike Brother players out there, feel free to leave a comment down below and share with us why do you play Spike Brothers, what got you to stay committed to them. And as always, leave a thumbs up on this video. That's always appreciated as well. Going for 50 likes as always. And most importantly, of course, for all my dedicated Spike Brother players out there, come set 10 with Bad End Dragger, the new broke ride for the Spike Brothers. You will be greatly rewarded.
Yes, you will.
So yeah, so Spike Brothers are definitely here to stay in the future too as well. So yeah, other than that, guys, be sure to subscribe to ZachZag here. We both have deck profiles on our channels for Spike Brothers. I think we're both exactly the same except like one card anyway.
I know what card.
Yeah. But if you guys have any questions on Spike Brothers, feel free to message ZachZag here or myself with anything you have. ZachZag has had more tournament experience with Spike Brothers than me, but yeah, feel free to do so. And other than that, guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.